नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतं सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 14, the story of King Vena, text number 23 onwards. So previously we saw how all the sages went to Vena and tried to teach him the Raj Dharma, the dharma of a king, how he should protect the population, how he should let them do the sacrifice, let them perform their varnashram duties properly. And then as a king, his opulence, his age, his power, his prestige will grow. But let's see what Vena says. Vena uvacha balisha bhat yuyam va dharme dharma manina ye vritti dampatim hitva jaram patim upasate. King Vena replied, "You are not at all experienced. It is very much regrettable that you are maintaining something which is not religious and are accepting it as religious. Indeed, I think you are giving up your real husband who maintains you and are searching after some paramour to worship." See, when you are in power, you just don't want to listen to anybody. That's a problem. King Vena was so foolish that he accused the saintly sages of being inexperienced like small children. In other words, he was accusing them of not having perfect knowledge. In this way, he could reject their advice and make accusations against them, comparing them to a woman who doesn't care for her husband who maintains her, but goes to satisfy a paramour who does not maintain her. Means King Vena is basically saying you should be worried about me, that I am maintaining you, but you're more towards worshipping Vishnu and thinking he's maintaining you. The purpose of this simile is apparent. It is the duty of the Kshatriyas to engage the Brahmins in different types of religious activities, and the king is supposed to be the maintainer of the Brahmins. If the Brahmins do not worship the king but instead go to the demigods, they are as polluted as unchaste women. So this is because once the power goes in the head, no proper guidance, no advice of scriptures or any saintly person can go in there. Text 24. Avjananti ami mudha nriparupinam ishwaram nanu vindanti te bhadram iha loke paratracha. Those who out of gross ignorance, do not worship the king, who is actually the supreme personality of Godhead, experiences happiness neither in this world nor in the world after death. So instead of understanding the king is a representative of Supreme Personality of Godhead, not is Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Vena wanted them to treat him like he is Bhagwan himself. And he's saying, if you're not going to worship me, you're not going to be happy in this life or in the next. को यज्ञ पुरुषो नाम यत्र वो भक्तिरिदृशी भर्तृ स्नेह विदुराणाम यथा जारे कुयोषिताम. You are so much devoted to the demigods, but who are they? Indeed, your affection for these demigods is exactly like the affection of an unchaste woman who neglects a married life and gives all attention to her paramour. So again, he's telling them you're being devoted to demigods instead of being devoted to me, and this is not proper. Vishnur virincho girisha indro vayur yamo ravihi parjanyo dhanadaha somaha Shitir Agnir Pampati Ete Chanyecha Vibhuta Prabhavo Varashatayo Dehe Bhavanti Nirpatehe Sarva Deva Mayo Nripaha. Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, Vayu, the master of air, Yama, the superintendent of death, the sun god, the director of rainfall, Kuvera, the treasurer, the moon god, the predominating deity of the earth, Agni, the fire god, Varuna, the lord of waters, and all others who are great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, all abide in the body of the king. For this reason, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods, who are simply parts and parcels of the king's body. Actually, in one way, I mean, he's twisting the statement. But it is said that the king or the leader of any country, he is the representative of all this, whatever he's saying, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, Indra, Vayu, Kuvera, Agni, Varuna. He is the representative of all of them, Yama. But he is saying, in my body, all of them reside. That's where he's wrong. There are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. Similarly, King Vena developed the demoniac mentality and presented himself as the supreme personality of Godhead. Such demons are numerous in this age of Kali, and all of them are condemned by the great sages and saintly persons. So this is, of course, when this is happening, that was Satyuga. But in this Kali Yuga, so many people, they say, I'm the incarnation of God, or I am this, or I am that. They are just simply rascals. That's all they are. And this King Vena, such a demoniac person, he's thinking, I am the supreme. And they all, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, Indra, Chandra, Varuna, Agni, they all come from me. So you should worship me instead of worshipping them. In fact, there's an interesting story in this regard. Of course, not in regard of King Vena. Ramanujacharya's guru, or his in his line, in his predecessors, Yamuna. There's a acharya named Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya, when he was a little boy, he was in his guru's ashram, and the king had a Brahman in his court, and this Brahman was very proud of his learning. And what he would do, he would defeat other Brahmins and acharyas in his kingdom. And the point was, the general condition was, if you're defeated by somebody in Shastrartha, he takes over all your property and all your wealth. So Yamunacharya's guru, somehow he got defeated by this Brahman. So instead of taking all the money, he used to take monthly or yearly contribution, annual contribution. So somehow Yamunacharya's guru has not been able to pay for 2 years. And he was out, gone somewhere, he was not in the ashram, when the Brahmins' messengers came, and they were very, very rude, because they were serving such a proud master. And Yamunacharya, as a little boy, he was there in the ashram. And these representative soldiers came, and they said, we are here to collect the money. And he hasn't paid for 2 years, so we're going to punish him and this or that, put a penalty on him. So Yamunacharya said, well, my Guruji is not here, but I don't like this pride in a Brahman. Brahman should not be proud. So I challenge him. Now, the problem was now he has challenged, so it cannot be taken back. So soldiers went back to the king, and the king said, "Well, this will be interesting to see a boy challenging our uh, court Brahman." And so king said, "Okay, bring him." So the soldiers went to Yamunacharya. He said, "Okay, king has called you." But Yamunacharya said, you are coming here to ask a Brahman to come to your court. I'm not going to go like that. You have to send me a palanquin." So soldiers went back and they talked to the king, and the king's wife was there, or maybe king went when he went to his wife. So this thing, king was really surprised. How can a little boy talk like this? But it was a proper etiquette, so he sent the palanquin and he told his wife. So wife said, somehow or other, looks like this Brahman is not an ordinary Brahman, this boy, and maybe probably he's going to defeat our court Brahman. So king was like, no, nobody can defeat our court Brahman. He has defeated so many other acharyas. So then there was a wager between the queen and the king. The king said, okay, queen, first the queen said, king, if you win, if this boy loses, I'll become a maid servant of your servant. King said, okay, that's pretty high wager. And he also said, okay, if this boy wins, I'll give him half of my kingdom. So that was a big wager. So anyway, the boy came, Yamunacharya came to the court, and this Brahman and everybody in the court, they was watching, they were very excited how this boy is going to challenge our court Brahman. So the court Brahman, he was elder, so he was asking some simple questions of grammar to Yamunacharya, and Yamunacharya answered. He said, "I think you are asking me simple questions considering my age, but can I ask you questions?" So the Brahman said, "Okay." So Yamunacharya said, "I'll ask you only 3 questions, and you have to refute those 3 sentences or 3 comments." He said, "Okay, you refute the comment that your mother is not barren." He's telling this Brahman, your mother is not barren. Means you prove that your mother is barren, lady. And the Brahman got offended. Here, what are you talking? He's my mother. She's my mother. How can she be barren? I'm born of her. Okay, Yamunacharya said, okay, fine. Second point that you have to refute, that the king is a righteous man. You refute this statement. And the court Brahman was, how can I refute it in front of king? How can I tell that he's not a righteous man? And the third statement was, you refute that the queen is a chaste woman. Now the court Brahman was really out of his brain, and he was saying, what in the world are you talking about? How can I refute this statement? That queen is a chaste woman. She's a chaste woman. How do you expect me to refute this, that she's not chaste? So Yamunacharya said, if you accept a defeat, I'll tell you, I'll refute all the statements. Now, what to do in front of king? He had to accept his defeat. So Yamunacharya, he explained that according to Manu Samhita, if a lady has only one son, she is still considered a barren woman. And he said, since your mother had only one son, so she should be considered a barren woman. So second question was, king is a righteous man. So Yamunacharya said this, and this we discussed yesterday also. The king takes 1/6 of the karma, pious and impious both, of his population. And Yamunacharya said, since this is Kali Yuga, most of the population is sinful. So the king has taken 1/6 of the sins of all his population, means he's not a righteous man. He cannot be a righteous man because he's taken so much of karma. So king loved this statement, but now the final statement of how can the queen not be chaste? And this is what Yamunacharya said, because the king is a representative of all these demigods, Varna, Indra, Chandra, Agni, Kuvera, and everybody, means all these demigods reside in the body of the king. So queen is wife of not just the king, but she's also considered wife of all these demigods. So how can she be chaste? So this is, I mean, of course, this is Shastrartha, and this is how they go about. And then Yamunacharya became the king of half of the kingdom. Of course, later on, his guru sent some messenger and to bring him back. That's a whole different story. But the king is representative, or all these demigods are in the body of the king. Tasmanma karma bhirvipra yajadvam gat matsara balim cha mayam harata matto anyah kuagra bhukpuma. King Vena continued, for this reason, O Brahmins, you should abandon your envy of me, and by your ritualistic activities you should worship me and offer me all paraphernalia. If you are intelligent, you should know that there is no personality superior to me who can accept the first oblations of all sacrifices. As stated by Krishna himself throughout Bhagavad Gita, there is no truth superior to him. King Vena was imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who was also speaking out of false pride, presenting himself as a Supreme Lord. These are the characteristics of a demoniac person. So he is saying, you should give me the first offering of the sacrifices. Instead of saying Krishna is he's a Yajna Purusha, he should get the first offering. Maitreya Vacha, Itham Vipare Yamati, Papiyan Utpatham Gataha, Anuniya Manas Tadyancham Na Chakre Brishtamangalaha. The great sage Maitreya continued, thus the king who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the request of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. The demons certainly cannot have any faith in the words of the authorities. In fact, they are always disrespectful to authorities. They manufacture their own religious principles and disobey great personalities like Vyasa, Narada, and even the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. As soon as one disobeys authority, he immediately becomes very sinful and loses his good fortune. The king was so puffed up and impudent that he dared disrespect the great saintly personalities, and this brought him ruination. So he disrespected the Brahmins in his country. And Brahmins were speaking on the basis of the scripture. They were not just making their own statements. And this brought his ruination. Iti te asat kritastena dvijah panditamanina bhagnayam bhavya yajayam tasmai vidura chukrudhu. My dear Vidura, all good fortune unto you. The foolish king who thought himself very learned, thus insulted the great sages, and the sages, being broken-hearted by the king's words, became very angry at him. Hanyatam hanyatamesha papa prakriti daruna Jivan Jagdasavashu Kurute Bhasmasad Dhruvam. All the great saintly sages immediately cried, "Kill him! Kill him! He is a most dreadful, sinful person. If he lives, he will certainly turn the whole world into ashes in no time." Saintly persons are generally very kind to all kinds of living entities, but they are not unhappy when a serpent or a scorpion is killed. It is not good for saintly persons to kill, but they are encouraged to kill demons who are exactly like serpents and scorpions. Therefore, all the saintly sages decided to kill King Vena, who was so dreadful and dangerous to all human society. We can appreciate the extent to which the saintly sages actually control the king. If the king or government becomes demoniac, it is the duty of a saintly person to upset the government and replace it with deserving persons who follow the orders and instructions of saintly persons. So here Prabhupada is saying they're not unhappy when a serpent or scorpion is killed. See, compassion is good, but compassion has to be properly guided to whom we have to show compassion. Especially if this is what it's in the scriptures. If you see a snake or a scorpion, one can kill it. There's no karma attached to it. Because a snake or scorpion they are so envious. They're so poisonous and so envious that they can attack without them getting attacked by anybody. And they can attack and kill somebody without getting attacked. It means they're not going to attack in the defense. So that's the reason they can be killed. There's no harm and one should not feel sad. But here Prabhupada is saying this demon, Vena, or other demons, they are exactly like serpents or scorpions because they're so envious in their nature. And therefore, all the saintly sages decided to kill King Vena. Normally, sages, they have nothing to do with the politics in the state. But Vena was so cruel and so sinful. The sages went to give him the right advice. So first they tried to give him the right advice, to bring him to the right path. Since he refused, so he had to be killed. Nayam arhati asadvrito naradeva varasanam yo adhiyagya patem vishnum vinandati anapatrapaha. The saintly sages continued, this impious, impudent man does not deserve to sit on the throne at all. He is so shameless that he even dared insult the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. One should not at any time tolerate blasphemy and insults against Lord Vishnu or his devotees. A devotee is generally very humble and meek, and he is reluctant to pick a quarrel with anyone. Nor does he envy anyone. However, a pure devotee immediately becomes fiery with anger when he sees that Lord Vishnu or his devotee is insulted. This is the duty of a devotee. Although a devotee maintains an attitude of meekness and gentleness, it's a great fault on his part if he remains silent when the Lord or his devotee is blasphemed. So as we have studied earlier, if we cannot make the other party quiet by our arguments, then another option is to kill him. And then after that, we have to kill ourselves. Third option is to leave that place where Lord Vishnu or his devotees are getting blasphemed. Leave that place not, with some ill feelings, but with a mood of still being merciful, thinking, oh Lord, please have your mercy upon these people. They are blaspheming unnecessarily. Ko venam parichakshita venam ekam rite ashubham प्राप्त ईदृशम ऐश्वर्यम यद अनुगृह bhajanah. But for King Vena, who is simply inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of fortune and opulence. When human society individually or collectively becomes godless and blasphemes the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is certainly destined for ruination. Such a civilization invites all kinds of bad fortune due to not appreciating the mercy of the Lord. So this blasphemy is very, very dangerous. It invites all kinds of bad fortune. In fact, that is the reason it is said one should kill that person who's blaspheming, because otherwise he's going to commit more offenses and he's going to go to hell forever. Of course, there is nothing like forever in the material world, but for a very, very long time. Itham vyavasita hantum rishyo rudamanyavaha nijagrur hum kritaravenam hatam achyut nindaya. The great sages, thus manifesting their coward anger, immediately decided to kill the king. King Vena was already as good as dead due to his blasphemy against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, without using any weapons, the sages killed King Vena simply by high-sounding words or simply by chanting some mantras. Rishibhi swashram padam gate putra kalevaram sunita palaya masa vidya yogena shochati. After all the sages returned to their respective hermitages, the mother of the king Vena, Sunita, became very much aggrieved because of her son's death. She decided to preserve the dead body of her son by the application of certain ingredients and by chanting mantras, mantra yogena. So she basically made the mummy out of the dead body of her son. So this mummy business was not started by Egyptians. It was done long time back. Ekada munyaste tu sarasvat salilap lutaha utvagrin satkathash chakrur upavishtaha saritate. Once upon a time, the same saintly persons, after taking their bath in river Saraswati, began to perform their daily duties by offering oblations into the sacrificial fires. After this, sitting on the bank of the river, they began to talk about the transcendental person and his pastimes. So they were not there to talk about politics or some gossip about some other sage. They were there to talk about Krishna and his pastimes. Vikshotithitans tadotpatan ahur lok bhayankaran apiya bhadram manathaya dasubhyo na bhaved bhuva. In those days, there were various disturbances in the country that were creating a panic in society. Therefore, all the sages began to talk among themselves. Since the king is dead and there is no protector in the world, misfortune may befall the people in general on account of rogues and thieves. So because of this problem with the rogues and thieves, they had installed King Vena on the throne in the first place. But now they killed him because King Vena was so cruel and so proud, and he was blaspheming the Supreme Lord. But the problem of rogues and thieves is still there. Whenever there is a disturbance in the state or a panic situation, the property and lives of the citizens become unsafe. This is caused by the uprising of various thieves and rogues. At such a time, it is to be understood that the ruler or the government is dead. All of these misfortunes happened due to the death of King Vena. Thus, the saintly persons became very anxious for the safety of the people in general. The conclusion is that even though saintly persons have no business in political affairs, they are always compassionate upon the people in general. Thus, even though they are always aloof from society out of mercy and compassion, They consider how the citizens can peacefully execute their rituals and follow the rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. That was the concern of these sages. In this age of Kali, everything is disturbed. Therefore, saintly persons should take to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra as recommended in the Shastras. So the saintly people, they were sages, they were worried about the people in general. And they knew that because of uprising of various thieves and rogues, the people cannot be happy or peaceful or safe. So Prabhupada says that even though they are always aloof from the society, out of mercy and compassion, they consider how the citizens can peacefully execute their rituals and follow the rules and regulations. So this is what happened in that kingdom at that time. But in Kali Yuga, it's all over the world and all the time. These kind of problems, thieves and rogues, whether in the form of government officials, whether in the form of real thieves and rogues, they're everywhere. So both for spiritual and material prosperity, everyone should devotedly chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Evam rishant rishyo dhavatam sarvatoshidam panso samuthito bhuresh choranam avilupatam. When the great sages were carrying on the discussion in this way, they saw a dust storm arising from all directions. This storm was caused by the running of thieves and rogues who were engaged in plundering the citizens. Thieves and rogues simply await some political upset in order to take the opportunity to plunder the people in general. To keep thieves and rogues inactive in their profession, a strong government is always required. And see, they saw a dust storm arising from all directions, meaning there were so many thieves and rogues and plundering the people in general, and they're running around. Tat upadravam agyaya lokasya vasulumpatam bhartari uparate tasmin anyam cha jighansatam choraprayam janapadam hina sattvam arajakam lokana Varayan Chakta api taddosha darshina. Upon seeing the dust storm, the saintly persons could understand that there were a great deal of irregularities due to the death of King Vena. Without government, the state was devoid of law and order, and consequently there was a great uprising of murderers, thieves, and rogues who were plundering the riches of the people in general. Although the great sages could subdue the disturbance by their powers, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper on their part to do so. Thus, they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. They were powerful, the sages. They could have stopped the disturbance. They could kill King Vena, and they could have easily killed all these thieves and rogues. But they say it's not proper for us to do so. The saintly persons and great sages killed King Vena out of emergency. But they did not choose to take part in the government in order to subdue the uprising of thieves and rogues, which took place after the death of King Vena. It is not the duty of Brahmins and saintly persons to kill, although they may sometimes do so in the case of an emergency. They could kill all the thieves and rogues by the prowess of their mantras, but they thought it's a duty of Kshatriya kings to do so. Thus, they reluctantly did not take part in the killing business. See, there is a difference between Varnashram system and there is Devi Varnashram system. So in regular Varnashram system, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, all their duties are given, and one should follow their duties properly. But what happens is, in case of emergency, one can perform the duty of the lower Varnashram. Means, Brahman can perform the duty of a Kshatriya. Kshatriya cannot perform the duty of a Brahman. That will be wrong. But going down is okay. So, as a matter of emergency, they could have, or they should have, taken the power and ruled till. But obviously, in this case, Maharaj Prithu is supposed to come and show his prowess. So this is different story. But the same thing Prabhupada had mentioned, that when this guy Muhammad Ghazani, he attacked Somnath temple 17 times, and he looted that temple, killed so many Brahmins in the process. See, all the Brahmins there, it is said, if they had even just picked up a rock and threw at the soldiers or the army of Ghazani, he would have run away. There were so many Brahmins there. But they all said, it is the duty of Kshatriya kings to protect us. It is not our duty to fight. So in the process, they got killed. And the temple was looted. So to protect the temple and the deities, Brahmins should have taken up the weapons. So theoretically, they were okay, but practically, they were not. So this is the difference. That's another term I use, Devi Varnashram system. So Devi Varnashram system is what? In that system, yes, there's system of Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, but anybody can do the work of anybody else. Because it's a Devi Varnashram system. There is no, everything is on the absolute level. All the services on absolute level. There's no up or down. Just like in our ISKCON Mayapur temple, there was an attack many years ago, I believe. After it should be in late 70s or early 80s, something like that. And temple was attacked by Muslims, and they wanted to obviously steal money, and they wanted to steal deity of Radharani and Prabhupada. Why Prabhupada? Because they thought it was made of gold, although the deity was made of copper. So they attacked, and not just attack, it was full-blown war, guns and bombs and everything. But the devotees fought back with whatever they had. So and one of our Maharajas, Bhakti Raghav Maharaj, his white body, but now he lives in, what is that, Madhvacharya's place in South India, in Bangalore, near Mangalore. I'm forgetting that name. It's not just coming. So he was in the part of the war, and fighting was going on in the middle of the night, and a bomb was thrown at him, and it fell near his leg, and it blasted, and he lost his leg. But the devotees fought back, and these dacoits who had attacked, they ended up taking the murti of Prabhupada. They could not take the murti of Radharani. But afterwards, the devotees got together, and then they bought guns, and they registered the license. They had the license for the guns, and then after that, we got this deity of Ugra Nrsingadev, the Nrsingadev at the Mayapur temple. So since Lord Nrsingadev came, nobody attacked. So that's a different story. But the point is, to serve, to protect the deities and the temple, one should be able to even take up the arms, even if he's a Brahmin. Or anybody, a sannyasi. Bhakti Raghav Maharaj was a sannyasi. And he lost his leg. He still walks with the support. But this is where they were not right. The Brahmins were not right when they let Muhammad Ghazni loot Somnath temple. And similarly, so many other temples were looted. They should have fought back. Ranganath temple in South India, just so sorry state of, because they didn't understand what is real Varnashram system. First and foremost duty is to protect the deities and the temple. Brahmana samadrikshanto dinanam samupekshakaha sravate brahm tasyapi bhinna bhandat tapayo yatha. The great sages began to think that although a Brahman is peaceful and impartial because he is equal to everyone, it's still not his duty to neglect poor humans. By such neglect, a Brahman's spiritual power diminishes, just as water kept in a cracked pot leaks out. Brahmans, the topmost section of human society, are mostly devotees. They're generally unaware of the happenings within the material world because they're always busy in their activities for spiritual advancement. Nonetheless, when there is a calamity in human society, they cannot remain impartial. If they do not do something to relieve the distressed condition of human society, it is said that due to such neglect, their spiritual knowledge diminishes. Almost all the sages go to the Himalayas for their personal benefit, but Prahlad Maharaj said that he did not want liberation alone. He decided to wait until he was able to deliver all the fallen souls of the world. So this is a real duty of a devotee. He's not just worried about himself, he's worried for the people in general. To uplift them spiritually. In the elevated condition, the Brahmins are called Vaishnavas. There are two types of Brahmins, namely Brahman Pandit and Brahman Vaishnav. A qualified Brahman is naturally very learned. But when his learning is advanced in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes a Brahman Vaishnav. Unless one becomes a Vaishnava, one's perfection of Brahminical culture is incomplete. So Brahman theoretically or technically is Brahman Janati iti Brahman. One who knows Brahman, one who knows the Supreme Lord is a Brahman. But one who serves the Supreme Lord with love and devotion is a Vaishnava. So that's why Prabhupada says, unless one becomes a Vaishnava, unless one comes to the level of serving the Supreme Lord with love and devotion, his Brahminical culture is incomplete. The saintly persons considered very wisely that although King Vena was very sinful, he was born in a family descending from Dhruv Maharaj. Therefore, the semen in the family must be protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Keshav. As such, the sages wanted to take some steps to relieve the situation. For want of a king, everything was being disturbed and turned topsy-turvy. So again, the Brahmins, they thought we will get the blame for not having the king, killing the king, and now the general public is getting harassed by thieves and rogues. Nangasya vansho rajarshe resha sansthatum arhati amoga virya indripa vanshe asmin keshvashreya. The sages decided that the descendants of the family of the saintly king Anga should not be stopped, for in this family the semen was very powerful and the children were prone to become devotees of the Lord. So the semen being powerful means the sanskaras coming down from a great devotee still remains in that family, especially before Kali Yuga, in other three yugas. It was generally that the son of a Kshatriya becomes a Kshatriya. Generally, of course, he had to prove his qualifications, but The semen was powerful, means the transfer of the qualities was still there. Not in Kali Yuga. The purity of hereditary succession is called Amogha Virya. The pious seminal succession in the twice-born families of the Brahmins and Kshatriyas especially, as well as in the families of Vaishyas also, must be kept very pure by the observation of the purificatory processes, beginning with Garbhadan Sanskar, which is observed before conceiving a child. Unless this purificatory process is strictly observed, especially by the Brahmins, the family descendants become impure, and gradually sinful activities become visible in the family. Maharaj Anga was very pure because of the purification of the semen in the family of Maharaj Dhruva. However, his semen became contaminated in association with his wife, Sunita, who happened to be the daughter of death personified. Because of this polluted semen, King Vena was produced. This was a catastrophe in the family of Dhruva Maharaj. All the saintly persons and sages considered this point, and they decided to take action in this matter as described in the following verses. So they thought this is, some mistake has happened, so we have to correct it. But the purity of semen also means once you do Garbhadan Sanskar and all the purification processes for a proper child to be born, and the proper mother should be there. So there are so many considerations. Vinishitya vamrishyo vipinasya mahipate mamanthuru tarasa tatrasid bahuko naraha. After making a decision, the saintly persons and sages churned the thighs of the dead body of King Vena with great force and according to a specific method. As a result of this churning, a dwarf-like person was born from King Vena's body. That a person was born by the churning of the thighs of King Vena proves that the spirit soul is individual and separate from the body. The great sages and saintly persons could beget another person from the body of the dead King Vena, but it was not possible for them to bring King Vena back to life. King Vena was gone, and certainly he had taken another body. The saintly persons and sages were only concerned with the body of Vena because it was a result of the seminal succession in the family of Maharaj Dhruva. Consequently, the ingredients by which another body could be produced were there in the body of King Vena. By a certain process, when the thighs of the dead body were churned, another body came out. Although dead, the body of King Vena was preserved by drugs or herbs and mantras chanted by King Vena's mother. In this way, the ingredients for the production of another body were there. When the body of the person named Bahuka came out of the dead body of King Vena, it was really not very astonishing. It was simply a question of knowing how to do it. From the semen of one body, another body is produced, and the life symptoms are visible due to the souls taking shelter of the body. One should not think that it was impossible for another body to come out of the dead body of Maharaj Vena. This was performed by the skillful action of the sages. So, of course, we don't know how this is done, but the sages did it, and they churned. I don't exactly know what it means, churning of the thighs of Maharaj Vena's body. But this is what the shlokas say. So somehow they brought we can say it's a tissue culture or whatever we want to call it. So somehow they brought that semen or power or the life force. So somehow they made another body, and the soul of Bahuka, dwarf-like person who was born, and he was born. Kaka Krishno Ati Sahvago Hasva Bahur Mahahano Hasva Panimna Nasagro Raktakshastamra Murdhaja. This person born from King Vena's thighs was named Bahuk, and his complexion was as black as a crow's. All the limbs of his body were very short. His arms and legs were short, and his jaws were very large. His nose was flat, his eyes were reddish, and his hair copper colored. Tam tu te avnatam dinam kim karomiti vadinam nishidetya bruvans tata sa nishadas tato abhavat. He was very submissive and meek, and immediately after his birth he bowed down and inquired, Sirs, what shall I do? The great sages replied, Please sit down, Nishid. Thus Nishad, the father of Naishad race, was born. It is said in the Shastras that the head of the body represents the Brahmins, the arms represent the Kshatriyas, the abdomen represents the Vaishyas, and the legs, beginning with the thighs, represent the Shudras. The Shudras are sometimes called black or Krishna. The Brahmins are called Shukla or white, and the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are a mixture of black and white. However, those who are extraordinarily white are said to have skin produced out of white leprosy. Those who are extraordinarily white are said to have skin produced out of white leprosy. It may be concluded that white or golden hue is the color of the higher caste, and black is the complexion of the Shudras. So it may be concluded. But still, see, again, we should not have that mentality of thinking every black is a Shudra, or everybody who's white is a Brahman. It all depends on guna and karma, qualities and the work one does. Tasya vanshanstu naishada girikanana gocharaha ena haran jayamano vena kalmasham ulbanam. After his, Nishad's birth, he immediately took charge of the resultant actions of King Vena's sinful activities. As such, this Nishad class are always engaged in sinful activities like stealing, plundering, and hunting. Consequently, they are only allowed to live in the hills and forests. The Naishads are not allowed to live in cities and towns because they are sinful by nature. As such, their bodies are very ugly and their occupations are also very sinful. We should, however, know that even these sinful men, who are sometimes called kirats, can be delivered from their sinful condition to the topmost Vaishnava platform by the mercy of a pure devotee. Engagement in the transcendental loving devotional service of the Lord can make anyone, however sinful he may be, fit to return home back to Godhead. One has only to become free from all contamination by the process of devotion service. In this way, everyone can become fit to return home back to Godhead. So, this is what confirmed by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, O son of Pritha, those who take shelter of me, though may be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, as well as Shudras, can approach the supreme destination. So this Nishad's birth, of course, later on when Lord Ram came and Nishad, the king of Nishads, Maharaj Guha, he helped him, he served him. So bhakti is not limited by our bodily condition, by a color of the skin or mental condition or anything. Even bhakti is not even limited to human beings only also. Hanumanji, Garuda, so many examples. Sampati, Jatayu, they were not even human beings. So bhakti is the activity of the soul. And soul is not a human being or whatever the soul has, the spiritual body, spiritual form, that's a different story. But soul, every soul has connection with the Lord. Every single soul. All we have to do is help everybody to revive that connection. That is bhakti. That is our preaching. This is all Prabhupada wants us to do. To help others revive that connection. So here ends the 14th chapter. Tomorrow we'll start the 15th chapter. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mantu.
प्रभुजी आई वाज जस्ट थिंकिंग कि अभी जो हम लोग स्टोरीज ये जो चल रहा था श्लोका इसमें साधु लोगों ने उसको वेना को खत्म कर दिया एंड इन कलयुग अगर साधु लोग कोई सजेशन देते हैं लीडर्स को तो बेचारे साधु भी अपनी जान गंवा बैठते हैं
Yeah. That's why it is Kali Yuga, na?
मतलब विद इन 2 और 3 डेज में न्यूज आ जाती है जी वो 3-4 साधुओं को मर्डर हो गया एंड देयर विल बी नो वन की जो उनके लिए बेचारों सोचे कि कौन कैसा कहाँ